My point is that contrary attributes are being predicated onto the same person of Jesus, right? And he can't be both of those at the same time.
Well, who
That's
says?
my point.
Okay, great. So, and thank you for your answer. It was clear, it was concise, it was articulate. Here's my question to you: what makes Muslims think that they have the ability to tell anybody what God's capabilities are? This is my biggest problem with Islam. You guys say that God cannot exist as a man. You guys say that God cannot have a son. You guys say that God cannot. You guys have so many prerequisites for what you think God can do, right? You say that it's a logical fallacy, but I guarantee you and promise you, you cannot illustrate how it's a logical fallacy. You guys just say that it is, absent the ability to explain how it's a logical fallacy. You feel like Islam is the way that people should go, correct?
Yes, yes.
Why should any Christian ever consider being a Muslim?
Because it's pure monotheism.
Okay. And how do you know that that is the right way to God?
Because honestly, logically speaking, this Christian way of seeing God, I see that that's a logical issue.
How do we see God?
How do we see God? What do you mean? Oh, you guys believe that Jesus is a person, a human and a divine at the same time, in the same sense, which is a logical contradiction, because you would say that the person of Jesus holds a contradiction because he would be both created and uncreated, as dictated by the divine and the human nature. He would be both all-powerful and non-all-powerful, as dictated by the two different natures. Both of those
Nuri, slow down, brother. You can take your time. I'm not going to cut you off. Take your time. Right. Speak slow. No, believe me, I'm not going to mute you. I'm not going to interrupt you. But I don't want you to speak faster than you're thinking. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my point is that contrary attributes are being predicated onto the same person of Jesus, right? And he can't be both of those at the same time.
Well, who
That's
says?
my point.
Okay, great. So, and thank you for your answer. It was clear, it was concise, it was articulate. Here's my question to you: what makes Muslims think that they have the ability to tell anybody what God's capabilities are? This is my biggest problem with Islam. You guys say that God cannot exist as a man. You guys say that God cannot have a son. You guys say that God cannot. You guys have so many prerequisites for what you think God can do, right? You say that it's a logical fallacy, but I guarantee you and promise you, you cannot illustrate how it's a logical fallacy. You guys just say that it is, absent the ability to explain how it's a logical fallacy. You think for a second that God, who created a universe so vast that you and I will never have the ability to comprehend every single thing in this universe. We don't even know what's outside of our solar system, right? He created a universe so vast that if we turn on a light right here where we're sitting, it will take trillions of years to reach the edge of that universe. And that's even if it's as big as human beings think it is, right? But yet you sit here thinking that the Muslim nation has the ability and the authority to impose their own limitations of what they think God can do. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And this is why when you guys say that, it makes absolutely no sense, because you're talking about a being who created matter from nothing, and so much matter that the human mind could never comprehend it. But yet we're supposed to listen to, absent anything, any evidence outside of just saying it's a logical fallacy. But how can you explain how it is a logical fallacy with him being God, being all powerful, being capable of anything? How is it a fallacy? That's what I'm asking you.
All right, so I saw two main points here. The first point being that God exists outside of logic, therefore we cannot really necessarily explain everything. And the second point being that
okay, so hold on. So Nuri, excellent. Hold on. I'm sorry. And just real quick, and you can finish your point. So you said we cannot explain everything.
No, I was just like trying to outline what you said. I want to make sure I understand.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that you were conceding that we can't explain everything, because I was like, well, okay, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand. So your first point was that we can't understand. Okay, so my response to that would be that understanding, if we could not disprove any religion if it does not go by the laws of logic, right? Because if a religion claimed that the sky was red, and I said, no, look, the sky is blue, right? Well, and I would say your religion is false because of that. The person defending that religion can just simply retort by saying, "Well, God exists outside of our logic, so therefore the sky could be red, but we just can't see it that way." So the thing is, my point is that you could not deconstruct any religion if you don't bring logic into it. And my second point would be that
okay, so real quick before you get into your second point, I'm glad you said that. So you can't deconstruct anything without bringing logic into it. Excellent.
Yeah.
Explain to me logically how God created matter from nothing.
How logically speaking, I can't tell you how it's.
Thank you. So that's the point. You cannot even tell me how God began creation logically. Therefore, you cannot tell me how God can exist in an incarnate form and a divine form simultaneously logically, because that sort of logical application is beyond your ability and mine. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I see what you're saying. So the thing is, what I'm saying is that it's not necessarily about how I can logically explain it, but what I'm saying is that you guys are affirming a logical contradiction.
No,
so
Nuri, but again, you're the one who is implementing the logic behind it, right? So you're saying, you just admitted that you cannot logically explain it. Correct. Because there are lots of things that human beings do not comprehend. If God, right, or Allah, however you want to call him, if we could comprehend him with our 3-pound human brain, then he is not a God that is worth our worship. But we cannot comprehend the way that God does things because he is beyond our comprehension. We cannot even exist in his presence because his goodness is too pure for sinners to exist in his presence. It would kill us instantly, right? So again, you are trying to apply logic to something that you could never understand. I don't pretend to understand it. I know what the Trinity is, but I am not going to sit here and say, well, here's the thing. Jesus Christ can't be God because then that means that he was incarnate, but also God at the same time. Except if we look at the Bible, it makes it clear that Jesus existed in his incarnate form because he emptied himself of his divinity so that he can come as a suffering servant, right? Having said that, even outside of that, you are trying to apply human logic to what God can do. It is so arrogant of anyone to think that they can look at something that God does and say, well, logically that can't happen. But because I'm up here, right? God is here and I'm here. So he's doing things and I have the ability to understand. But my brother, you don't. That's what you don't understand. You could never understand how God can do things. The difference between you and I is that I'm willing to admit that. So logical fallacies aside, it may seem like a logical fallacy to a human being, but also there are human beings that think that taking the lives of innocent unborn children is okay, right? There are human beings that still believe the earth is flat. There are human beings that believe a lot of silly things, but it doesn't mean that the things that they believe are correct. You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah. So I would say that, well, I would ask you a question. Do you agree that the hypostatic union, do you agree that in its apparent form, that's a logical contradiction? Do you agree that it's logically like impossible, right? Like from a logical perspective, would it be impossible?
Repeat this. From a logical perspective, would what be impossible?
The hypostatic union, Jesus being both God and human at the same time.
Okay. Here's the thing though, Nuri, what I'm trying to tell you, your entire objection is built on it. Right. It's because what I'm trying to tell you is that I don't even succumb to that as an authority because it's a categorical mistake, right? If you keep calling the hypostatic union a logical contradiction when it's nothing of the sort, then the question in and of itself is flawed. The contradiction would only exist if I said Jesus is both fully God and not God, or fully man and not man, in the same sense and at the same time. But that's not what I said. That's not even what Christian doctrine claims. It says that Jesus is one person with two distinct natures, divine and human. Those natures do not ever blend into a third thing, right? And they don't cancel each other out. Look, in all my time looking at this, right? And I'm far from an expert on it, okay? I hardly talk about it because for me, I know what the truth is. But if we look at every competent philosopher, right? They understand that having two different sets of properties in one subject, right? From two natures is not a contradiction. It's a paradox, but it's not a logical impossibility, right? So for me, it's not logically impossible. And if you think it is, you're not actually understanding the categorical nature, which is why I was trying to tell you what I was telling you.
Okay. So what I would say is that when it goes back to, if we're going to talk about it being logical or not, I guess we can go into that. So,
sure, go ahead.
Would you agree that the Father or God is necessarily not human, right? Necessarily not human.
God the Father?
Yeah, the God the Father, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And Jesus and God the Father have the same divine nature, right?
They have the same divine nature, correct.
So that means that Jesus is necessarily not human and human. So, because if they have both the same nature, right?
Well, Jesus, when he was in his incarnate form, he was 100% man, 100% God. He had two natures. Yes.
Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is that his person, if you were to talk about his person, he would be both necessarily not human and human.
No, he's not necessarily not human. He's human and he's God. It's two different things.
Yeah, but the thing is, what I'm saying is that you say that the Father.
But did you hear what you just said? You said that he's human and not human. But that's not that's not what anybody ever says.
But the divine nature is not human.
The divine nature, of course not. He's 100% man and 100% God.
So if he has 100% of the divine nature, that means he must be 100% not human. And he also must be 100% human in your belief.
Incorrect, because that's what I'm trying to tell you. Even the Bible says that he was fully man and fully God. Again, something that you and I cannot understand, but you're trying to apply limited human logic to it, right?
I wasn't trying to steer in that direction. If we can talk about...
Well, no. Well, here's the thing, though. And I understand where you're coming from, but again, this is very common for Muslim apologetics, right? Because what ends up happening is all the questions are based on a fundamental and flawed misunderstanding of what the Trinity is to begin with, right? The Father and the Son both fully share the divine nature, as I told you, right? But Jesus, unlike the Father, also took on a human nature at the Incarnation. So when I say Jesus is fully God and fully man, I'm not saying he's human and not human, which again, I told you a couple answers back, right? Nobody ever said, yes, he's human, but he's also not human. Nobody said that, right? Jesus is human, okay, at the same time, in the same way, period. Nobody ever said he wasn't human. I'm saying he's divine by nature, like the Father, and human by his second nature that the Father does not have. It's not a contradiction unless you ignore what nature means. Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying. But my issue with the Christian doctrine is that if you were to say that Jesus has all the properties, maybe I'm not understanding here.
Sure.
But if Jesus has all the properties of the Father and the divine nature, they both share the same nature, right? And you said earlier that the Father is not human. That means that Jesus in his divine nature is not human. And if you were to take that into his person, then you would say that his person is human and not human. That's my point. I don't know if I'm not understanding here. I'm sorry, but that's
definitely not.
Yeah, you're not understanding.
You're not understanding. That's definitely what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't think that you're asking the wrong questions. I just think that there's a conflation of ideas.
Yeah.
And so it seems like what the premises are lead to a fallacious conclusion. Good evening, Nuri. Sorry, I didn't greet there. But I love speaking about this topic, so I just had to jump on.
Oh, no, Grafton, go ahead, please. As a matter of fact, I gotta use the bathroom, so I'm going to let you take it away. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, sweet. So just from what I did pick up was that you find the idea of the incarnation as well as the hypostatic union to be logical contradictions. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what you were saying was that it's a contradiction in the sense that, Jesus can't be not God and God. In other words, he can't be P and not P at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, correct. Right. So it would be the same kind of, logical impossibility, because it's just called a contradiction, a logical impossibility. It would be the same logical impossibility as a glass being full and empty at the same time, right?
Well,
the same glass.
Well, not necessarily, because full. The meaning of full is that the entire thing is I guess what would be the word? Like it would have the entire thing
filled up. Yeah, the volume is completely occupied. The volume of the glass is occupied, right? That's full, and it can't be empty at the same time as being full. You would agree that that's a logical impossibility.
Yes.
So that's a contradiction, right?
Yes, I would say the glass cannot be completely full and completely empty.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
And in the same way, you're basically positing that Jesus can't be fully God and fully man at the same time. Those would be contradicting attributes.
Yes.
Right? Cool. You could have one glass that's full and one glass that's empty, and that's not a contradiction.
Yes, that's true. But then that means Jesus would be two persons.
No.
Jesus
possesses two natures.
Right.
The nature doesn't make the person, if I can put it like that. To conflate nature and person is where your issue's coming in. That's what the hypostatic union itself is.
Right.
It's two natures in
Correct.
one person. Christians don't believe that the nature constitutes a new person. Does that make sense?
I can even break it down, and forgive me for forgive me.
I don't know
for,
what happened there. Did we just lose Maverick?
No, I'm here. I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Grafton, are you here? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, hang on. So I wanted to show our brother here something. Where is it? Allow. Okay, Nuri, can you see this? Because I know that one of the most popular ideas behind this entire conversation is that Jesus being God is a logical contradiction, like a square circle or square triangle, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But there is nothing in Christian doctrine that ever makes an assertion that Jesus is a logical contradiction, because for me, it's always been very clear, right? I don't know where Muslim apologists got this square circle thing or this illogical thing, because there's nothing illogical behind it. There can literally be two shapes existing within one another, right? Existing simultaneously within one another, having their own individual natures at certain points of intersectionality, right? Where the square being on the outside, a circle being on the inside, right? Or you can have a square with a triangle, whatever. But at the end of the day, I can put two shapes inside of each other. As a matter of fact, there are other places where we have many shapes that fit inside one another, and none of these are logical fallacies. Not a single one of them, because all you're looking at is two different shapes existing in the same space at the same time. They both have the exact same nature, right? This has the nature of a circle. This has the nature of a square. Does this square become any less of a square because the circle's inside of it? And does this circle become any less of a circle because of it's inside of a square?
No.
Exactly.
The attributes of the one shape nature that do nothing to detract from the attributes of the other shape nature.
Correct.
Circle being circle doesn't make the square less of a square.
Correct.
Yeah.
They can coexist. It's not a logical impossibility. Therefore, having two natures is not a contradiction, especially when we're dealing with an all-powerful God.
And God Logic actually illustrated that to Ali Dawa a couple of months ago when they met up. When Ali, and you know what was funny about this is that Ali Dawa actually gave this children's toy to God Logic as, I don't know if he was trying to be sarcastic or whatnot, and maybe you guys have seen the video. I know I definitely have, where Ali Dawa was trying to make the correlation of Jesus being God to this fallacious metaphor of a square circle or something contradictory. Now, what was funny about that video was that the children's toy was in the shape of a square, and inside of the square, there were several other shapes. And God Logic made it clear. He said, okay, so what shape is this toy? It's a square. And then he pointed at the circle. He was like, well, what shape is this one? But is it existing inside the square? Yes. Are they existing simultaneously? Yes. And does this shape exist within the square? Yes. There you go. He had nothing else to say. And that's as simple as we can make it for you, right? Does that make sense, Nuri? Or are we like kind of on
in terms of the shape thing? I see what you guys are saying.
Right. So
when we talk about Jesus, I feel like maybe I don't see the connection, because, for example, you guys would say that Jesus is the divine nature is uncreated. Like, this is another thing, right? Divine nature is uncreated, human nature is created. But you guys would say what? You guys would say Jesus is created, or
we would say that Jesus in his incarnate form obviously was created. His incarnate form had to be created, right, through a virgin birth.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But look, the thing is that he has to be 100% divine, right?
Well, Nuri,
here's an example.
In the Quran, you've read the Quran, correct?
Yeah. I've read the Quran.
Okay, so you've read the Quran. So even in the Quran, it acknowledges the virgin birth of Jesus Christ. Yes or no?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so even in the Quran, it acknowledges that Jesus Christ, who, again, in your Quran, who is returning for judgment at the end times, was created through a virgin birth. So obviously, you know that Jesus was born immaculately.
He was still created. I'm not
correct.
Sure
but so essentially, what your issue is that you think that God cannot enter into his own creation.
Yeah.
Okay, and where do you get that idea? Where do you get the idea that God is limited by your understanding of his abilities?
Because God is far above what he has created, right? He is separate from us. He's the most powerful. He's not in need of his creation, and becoming inside the creation will mean that he needs his creation, right?
Well, okay, no, that's where do you get that from? Where do you get that explanation from?
So if God was inside a place, right?
No, Nuri. I'm not asking you to repeat the premise. I'm asking you where you got that concept from.
I'm not sure, actually. I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
That's exactly the point.
There we go. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You see why I have such a problem. So the point is that you are repeating baseless assertions based on things that you've heard that are not from the Quran. They're not even from the Bible. You guys just at some point started spewing the idea that God entering into his own creation is unthinkable. Even though there's nothing stating that that's the case, you guys are only simply stating that because you have a problem with the Trinity and Jesus Christ being God.
What I'm saying is that you have to like disprove my assertion. Even like if I couldn't tell you where exactly I got it, you'd have to disprove that.
No, I don't. Nuri, the burden of proof is on you because you're the one who came. You're the one who repeat. You are the one who's making the assertion.
I gave you a reasoning. I gave you the reasoning that being in a place limits him, right? Or being in like inside of something limits him, right? So you have to.
Well, you do understand that in the incarnation, when Jesus came into the world in his incarnate form, he did so to fulfill prophecy, and he came in the prophesying form of the suffering servant. So he willingly limited himself. But again, where do you get this idea? And I'm asking you again. Maybe I wasn't clear. Where do you get this idea that he's entering his creation because he needs his creation? Who told you that?
You know, I'm saying by entering it, he would be in need of it. He would be dependent on something, right? He would be dependent on the creation that he is in,
which is called the sacrifice. Yes, if you enter it in an incarnate form, you are sacrificing your divine nature in order to come fulfill the prophecy, live sinless, shed your blood for those children that you love, because you know they don't have the ability to do it for themselves.
Okay, correct. He sacrificed his divine nature, right? So, but that doesn't really like stray away from the issue, though.
Nobody said sacrifice. We said he emptied himself of his divinity temporarily.
Okay. So yeah, like the top of, I think it's like kenosis or something, right? Something like that.
Well, you can call it what you want, but I'm saying the way it says it in the Bible.
Look, I just want to say something.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So Nuri, I understand that in Islam there's this idea that it's not befitting of God to enter creation, right? My point, though, or at least Maverick's point, and I know where the question was coming from, where do you get the idea that by entering it automatically creates need or dependency within God? Let's take Jesus the person out of the picture. Just like hypothetically, if I, the architect, build a house, so if I, the designer, build a car and I get into my car, how does that necessitate that I now need something?
If you get into the car, well, no, what I'm saying is that if Allah created and he went inside of it, that means he needs that place to be.
Yes, exactly. If I create a car and I get inside the car, how does that make me now need something? So that's the idea we are challenging.
So to be inside the car, what would you need to be in it, right? You would need to be in it, right? To be inside.
No, I could choose to go in. I don't have to be in the car.
But to be inside of it, you would need to be in it, right?
Why would I need to be in the car? I chose to go in the car.
And even just you're entering into a realm of just limitation, right? Because you can't do everything. Then you would no longer be all powerful because you're entering an area where you are now limited.
Correct. But Nuri, so then the question becomes, right, so you're kind of on the right track. You're on the right road for the wrong reasons, right? So I'm going to ask you again. If we know that Jesus entered into physical creation and he did so knowing what his mission was, then there is no issue because he understood that he was entering into creation and emptying himself temporarily of divinity because he had a specific mission and prophecy that he came to fulfill. So you continue to say, well, why would he? Again, appealing to your illogical fallacies of, well, I don't understand why he would do it, so therefore it makes absolutely no sense. No, you continue to make these statements absent any evidence of actual logical inconsistency. What you're doing is you're trying to equate your understanding of what you've been taught, right? And there's no theological grounding behind what you're saying about God not being able to enter creation. So that's why I want to get back to the base question with you again, because we're going off way too far and it just doesn't make any sense. What I'm asking you is, where are you getting this idea? I don't care if it's a hadith from the Quran, from your paradigm, where are you getting that? And I'm not talking about what Muslim apologists say. I'm saying that theologically, I want you to ground your idea. Where does it say God cannot enter his creation? Where does it say he cannot interact? with his creation.
Rationally speaking.
No, Nuri, I don't care about rationally speaking, brother. Now we're talking about your paradigm. You are a Muslim. So I'm gonna hold you to this standard now, because you're making statements and you're not even understanding that you're speaking outside of your own Quran. So again, I'm going to ground you back into your own theology. Where does your theology teach that God cannot exist or interact with his own creation?
Well, we believe that Allah, for example, is outside of, is above creation, right?
So, yeah, we do too. But where does it say he can't interact with it?
I mean, I would have to like look through that, right? I don't have the exact hadith in mind or something like that, right?
There isn't. So, that's why it was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
That's why I was asking. Give me 1 second, Nuri. Give me 1 second. We have another guest here on TikTok. They're coming in. I'll give them a second. Harvest Noel, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to finish off with Nuri, and then we'll come up to you, okay?
Yes, sir.
So Nuri, do you understand why we're asking a question now? We can speak about the nature of Jesus. We can speak about logical inconsistencies. No problem. I have no problem having those conversations. At the end of the day, everything that we spoke about today, none of the ideas that you presented were even remotely fundamentally rooted in Islam or what you're taught in the Quran. None of it.
The thing is, I wasn't trying to defend Islam right here. I was just attacking your religion. When I came here, I was just trying to talk to you about your religion.
Correct, but you're doing it as a Muslim, correct?
Yeah, I'm being as Muslim, but I'm not talking about Islam here, right? So
right, but you are a Muslim.
Wait, host, please. You were talking about people interrupting, but
no, I'm asking you a question. But you're a Muslim,
I've been
right?
trying to like keep it cordial, but
okay, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, I was using logic, something that you maybe say is out. In this case, is outside. You've used different approaches when defending your religion. But you said that logic, for example, is outside. God's ability is outside our human logic.
Mm-hmm.
But then we went into talking about how is it actually logically impossible, right? And then now we're going back into Islam, which is, I guess, outside of what we were
right, because you're making assertions based, and I'm asking you that's the thing, is that I don't need to stay away from Islam in order to make a point, right? I'm perfectly within my rights to ask you on what bases you are making these assertions. So I understand that it may make you uncomfortable because I'm now applying your statements and I'm reflecting them off of your paradigm. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, are you arguing it as a Muslim, or are you arguing it because it doesn't make any sense? Either way it goes, it doesn't matter. I'm asking you would have to have some kind of fundamental grounding to believe that Jesus cannot be God. And that's why I'm asking you about the Quran.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that the last point I remember making was that Jesus cannot be created and uncreated. And then you said, wasn't Jesus in the Quran, wasn't he born of a Virgin Mary? Which is what I thought you were going to go into the topic, but it was actually irrelevant to the topic. So
but the thing is, created and uncreated, you're confusing two different things, because you said yourself, well, is he human and not human? And I had made it clear to you, and I explained that to you 2 separate times, that nobody ever made the assertion that Jesus was human and not human. Does that make sense?
Well, you would have to imply that. Okay, we're going back to.
No, I wouldn't have to imply anything.
We explained it to you.
Right, we don't have to imply anything. That's the problem.
You weren't there for it. But the thing is, the host, you said that Jesus and the Father have the same nature, the same divine nature, and the Father is necessarily not human. Therefore, the Jesus is also necessarily not human. Okay, now, as I was saying.
Okay, but right there, Nuri, you see, this is where you're making your mistake. You are confusing divine nature with personhood. Our God is one God in 3 persons, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's what you're not understanding. You are confusing divine nature of the Father with the divine nature of they share the divine nature, right? But the person of Jesus, you're confusing with the Father. That's like saying, well, is Jesus the Father? No, we never said that he was the Father. You are making the claim that we are saying that we have to imply that he's human and not human at the same time. And it doesn't make any sense. Hang on, I got another guest. Give me 1 second, all right? Guys, at the end of the day, if you're making a claim, you have to let me know where you are making that claim from fundamentally. This makes absolutely no sense. If I tell you, show me in the Quran where it says that God cannot interact with his creation, and you're telling me, well, this is just about logic. Well, hold on a second. If you believe in your God, Allah, and you believe in your paradigm, then there should be no issue with me asking you where in the Quran that is. And he says, well, I have to find it. Well, good luck, because you're never going to find that. There's a reason why I asked that. right? So that's there's a reason why I say what I say, guys. And when it comes down to it, I am not ever going to limit myself to the way that I ask you questions or the way that I ask for evidence, because no matter what, it doesn't matter which angle you're approaching it from. As a human being, you don't have the ability to limit God. You don't have the ability to pretend like you understand what he can and can't do. And you especially don't get to squirm out of it when I ask you to show me in the Quran where it says that he can't do these things. Because if you're saying that he can't do these things and it's not even in your Quran, then what are you arguing from? That I just don't understand it.
Yeah.